Shut-In 2022. Not to be confused with the other Shut-In movie, which was made in 2016. A small note on that one. It's highly forgettable. I don't think anyone remembers it. I got terrible ratings. I think I got like 4 stars in IMDb. So that's a forgettable movie. What we're talking about is the Daily Wire's 2022 version, Shut-In. So this movie was released less than a month ago at the time of this. And it's an hour and a half long. And it has 6.4 out of 10 stars on IMDb. And over 4,000 rating. A few interesting things about this movie I'd like to say first. So first, this was done by the Daily Wire, not a Hollywood production. And I'll get much more into Daily Wire and who they are if you didn't know, or why they are creating this as a movie outside of Hollywood and why it's such a big deal. So I'd like to get first fact. There's only 5 actresses in this movie. We have Rainey Qualley. I really want to say Quality. Rainey Qualley, Jake Horowitz, Luciana Vendette, Vincent Gallo, who I've heard is a little bit of a loony, but that's what I've heard. He's a bit of a unique character, I'll say. And then Penelope Martone. And another thing is that one of the actresses, I believe Penelope Martone, is a sub for the little girl in this movie. So there's only 4 characters in this entire movie, okay? So a brief plot is it's about a mom with her 2 kids, her young daughter, who's like 4 or 5, and her son, who's like a year old. And she's trying to move into this new house, but then her ex-husband, I believe, shows up with a friend of his, and she gets locked in her own pantry. And so basically the premise of the movie is she's trying to escape the pantry to, find her kids and save them. It's going to be done to them. That's the plot. Now, I will talk about the Daily Wire and why this is actually important. So the Daily Wire is known for its it's a right, conservative political media outlet. And the interesting thing about this movie is that it was released on YouTube for free, but then after the premiere ended on YouTube, you can only watch it if you're a Daily Wire subscriber. And you'd be thinking, well, that's just really stupid and dumb. I want to watch it. No. Okay? There is always a reasoning for it. And the reasoning for this is Daily Wire itself is expanding. So I said before, this Daily Wire is a political company now, but news media outlet. But this movie did not actually have political messaging at all. It had some, Judeo-Christian, mostly Christian values in this movie. You had that little sparks here and there, but it was mostly free of political. It was actually entirely free of political usage, and a little bit of religious symbolism in there, but not directly in your face type of symbolism, which makes people feel uncomfortable even if you are religious. So that was good about this film. People were really surprised. It was a surprise. It wasn't so much as a surprise to me. In order to grab an audience, you try not to be too biased, and they were not very biased at all. The purpose of Daily Wire coming out with movies. So they previously had another movie that they were a part of. People are calling this technically their second film, but this is really their first actual film. The first one was Run, Hide, and Fight in early 2021, but they were a part of that. They didn't have the official holdings on that film. This one they do. So the background of this film was it was one of the hottest scripts on Hollywood's blacklist, I think it's called, where Hollywood has the biggest, scripts online. And actually a lot of Hollywood actors were interested in doing this film. I forgot who they were, but there were a couple of famous Hollywood actors who were interested in doing this film. A company picked it up and was going to start doing it, but then COVID hit. And it fell apart. Nothing really happened. So then Daily Wire in 2020 just was like, hey, we're going to pick this up. So they picked it up and they made it their own project. And what the Daily Wire is doing, the purpose of what they are doing, is basically to be anti-Hollywood right now. Because what Hollywood's doing is being, with all the woke and gender ideology like that. Their stories have not been good. If you've noticed the past, I'd say 10 years, 5-10 years, the majority of quote-unquote good films have been really hard to find. And all the other ones that are, the big name, companies that are making, they're all remakes. But the problem is remaking most of them into woke stuff, woke ideology. And normal people are tired of it. So Daily Wire picked up this movie, this script, and was like, hey, let's do a movie. They're taking, actors who have been shunned by Hollywood because of, their own personal beliefs. And they're taking them on like, hey, do these movies for us, You can do what you want. And this is kind of a symbolism of what should be America, is you should be able to be hired not by your beliefs. So there is the Daily Wire. And an interesting note on this film as well. In the original script, the quote-unquote villain, so if you've watched the movie, this is if you watched the movie, the original villain of the script was an evil rabid dog, if you can believe it. Oh, the stupidity. But Daily Wire and the director and the writer fixed it. And speaking of the writer is not actually Christian. I believe she is an atheist. So they're not discriminating there. But anyway, that's why there's no box office details. Because, as I said, it was released on YouTube, and you can only watch on Daily Wire. Which gets to my main point here, is the Daily Wire is creating their own subscription service. Kind of like, there's Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, Prime, etc. And you're like, well, why didn't they release it on DVD? Well, then they'd be giving money to the people who would produce the DVDs, and you obviously don't want that, because, they can change anything. As far as the movie itself, I'd give it an A-. Now I know the IMDb crowd, when I after finished watching the movie, and I went to look at the ratings, it was like 8.4, something crazy like that. And more people, obviously, as more people come on, the ratings drop down. I didn't expect it to drop that low though, like at 6.4. But personally, I think this was a good movie. This was an above average good movie, A-. The scenes were good. The acting was better than average, I'd say, and it was a good thriller. There was one really brutal scene in that movie. I was just like, wow. And they said the director talked about how Hollywood would have done the movie versus the one they came out with, and obviously the difference of the villain is the dog, but also Hollywood now is trying to emphasize the quote-unquote strong female characters. And he said in an interview that the heroine of the story would just, after 30 seconds, bust out of the pantry with superhuman strength, and that would be the end of the story, and that'd be a really boring story. But no, this character has toughness, grittiness. She had flaws and a fight in her to stay alive. It was a really gritty film, I'll give you that. The lighting, the way the camera was positioned in places. Just a very, very solid film. There were a few things I'd like to nag at, which is why it wasn't like an A+ or an A. I mean, the ending, I didn't like the ending that much. They could have probably had a more satisfactory ending to it. So, there is the review for Daily Wire Shut-In. And you're wondering, well, are they going to turn this into a full-time thing? And it does look like it. They're coming out with 2 more movies. One next week called The Hyperions. And then in the summer, they're coming out with a Western called Terror on the Prairie with Gina Carano, which looks very good. I saw the 1-minute trailer. I looked at the trailer for Hyperions. I wasn't really too into it. Someone called it kind of like a Wes Anderson type movie, which was an interesting concept. Looking at the trailer, I didn't like it that much, but I'll give a review on it, see if, I'll change my opinion. But overall, I'm excited for what Daily Wire has to come out with. And it's precisely the fact that they're not being political, but they're making good, actual stories that we can connect with, unlike all this Hollywood garbage that we've had. So that is it. Godspeed.